Hey guys, NJ here. So today I want to have a quick chat with you about 1106 motors. Obviously these are kind of the staple now for the 2.5 inch quadcopters, and I've had a fair few of these on my bench and reviewed them, and hopefully you guys have all been catching those, and I don't see this slowing down. Obviously the 2.5 inch market is pretty flooded now. There's a lot of stuff out there varying in price quite a large amount. But I know many of you have said to me the one that you've been waiting for the review on is the Leader 3 SE, and I've already done part one of that, which was to show you the flight footage. Sometimes I do the bench review first, then the flight footage. I did it the other way round in this case, and despite getting this probably earlier than most people have, I haven't actually done the part two review yet, and there's a reason for that. Now, when it comes to these 1106 motors, that what I found is there's been a real variation in performance across motors that are all very similarly spec'd. And what I mean by that is, for instance, let's take the one that I reviewed not that long ago, which was the Skystar X120. Again, 1106 motor, 4500 kV, 3 to 4S compatible. 4S has become kind of a new thing, but very possible on these little 2.5 inch quads that are light. Which has been quite exciting. And one of the big problems I had with this, which I mentioned in the review if you saw it, was that the motors on this just got screaming hot no matter what I did. And I tried everything. You can see I put a big old capacitor on here. I went through the tuning, I messed with the filtering, I just went through all my normal procedure of trying to work out why these motors got so damn hot. And in the end I just concluded that's the way it is. Probably better just to run this on 3S than 4S, because these motors just do get hot. Maybe it's a manufacturing thing, I don't know, but it did bug me that I couldn't quite put my finger on the problem. Then came along the Leader 3 SE, and I'll come back to that in a minute, after which came the Get Phoenix. You can see I've got a run cam split on here. I've been messing around with that. That's not a standard part of this kit, but you know, I gave this a really favourable recommendation, a good review, and it was and is a fantastic performing quadcopter. Again, 3 and 4S, similar weight, 1106 4500 kV motors, but this time it was absolutely fine. There was no issue with heat at all. It was, the motors came down absolutely, you know, just barely warm. The efficiency was good, the performance was great, same props, same motor specs, similar weight. This was starting to raise an eyebrow for me. Now the Leader sat somewhere in the middle in terms of motor temperatures, and I have a temperature gun so I get a reading to see where these things are sitting. Now, the Leader, I actually ended up... The only difference with this guy, obviously, is that it was called the Leader 3 SE because you could run 3-inch props, and the props that came supplied with this were a HQ 3x3x3, so not an enormous amount of pitch, but nonetheless, you're running with a 3-inch prop. It's going to put more stress on an 1106 motor, and that was where the question mark lay with me. And I went through testing this on the 2.5-inch props that are on here now, both 3 and 4S, and then 3 and 4S on the HQ 3x3x3 props. At which point I blew a motor when I was running it on 4S, and I kind of had that uncomfortable feeling in the back of my mind. There was the danger of that happening, but I wasn't going to be polite on the throttle. I needed to test it fully to see whether it could do what it claimed. And yeah, if you've never seen a motor coil burnout, it's quite exciting to watch. Obviously, I don't recommend that you go and try to do this just to see the spectacle. But what happened with this was I was actually flying it, and it was line of sight at the time, and you just get this huge vertical plume of smoke come out the top. So it actually looked really cool, like this kind of smoke firework out the top of the motor, out of the bell housing. And I thought, yeah, that looks pretty cool. And then straight after that, yeah, we're crashing. And that was that. So I reported this back to Full Speed to Lewis. And he said, we've got a new design motor. I think there is a problem with those ones. So he sent me another set of motors. He said, how many do you want me to send you? I said, well, send me a few, because I'm going to be testing this hard. It might have just been a QC thing from your motor supplier. I don't know, but send me a few over and I'm going to repeat this test. So the new motors that were sent over had a C in the name. I think, I can't quite read what they say. T1, sorry, T... So they've got a C at the end of them anyway, which signified these were the newer spec of motor. I installed those, I tried it, and I got the same thing. I blew another motor. And when I went to pick it up, this time I walked over to it, and it just so happened that as I grabbed it round the motor and literally burned my fingers. Again, screaming hot, there was a problem there. So I replaced the motor, and this time I thought, right, hang on, something's wrong here. These are all 1106 4500 kV. I've tested all the usual things. There's not a problem with the tune. There's no audible oscillation. Everything's work. I back things off as well, especially derivative can be a real killer of this. Back the derivative right off. I was still experiencing the same problems, same temperatures, yet the Phoenix was absolutely fine. And the Phoenix was doing what the math said it should do in terms of kV efficiency. Everything seemed right on that one. So I came up with a quick and dirty test, which was to plug them all into Betaflight, bypass the PID controller by going to the Motors tab, at which point you're just directly controlling the ESC. You're not running through the PID loop, and there's no interaction from that. We're just directly controlling the motor. And then what I did was to put these onto, it didn't matter 3 or 4S, I can't remember which I did at the time, but the point of the test was I put them all up at full RPM, and the dirty part of the test was I just wanted to use my ear and hear where the audible pitch of those motors were, because if they're all at the same spec, I expect to hear them all to be at roughly the same pitch at full throttle. They should all be sitting at that to make that same pitch of that same noise. They shouldn't be sounding different in terms of their RPM. And the result was there was a pretty huge difference between the RPM. Lo and behold, the one sitting with the lowest pitch was the Phoenix, which makes sense. The one sitting at the highest in pitch and doing the highest RPM was the Skystar, which had the hottest temperatures. And just below that, but also pretty high, was the motors of the Leader. Now, what is too hot? From the research I've done, I would certainly say if this thing, there's the touch test that we all know, which is if you can put your hands on it, fingers on it, and hold it for a few seconds and it's not burning, you're probably all right. And I'd say that's about fair. The Skystar with my temperature gun was reaching 70 degrees and upwards, that's not good, because at 80 degrees the magnets in these motors they're going to start degrading, at which point your motor performance is going to start degrading. That's bad news, and obviously we want to avoid that. So what the test showed me is that I think it's very likely that the Phoenix and Gep RC motors have always been solid from all the models I've had of them over the years. Their motors, I think they're manufacturing themselves because they're always of their own design, and they're always solid. The bearings are always good. They're decently spec'd, and they perform well. I believe those are actually at the 4500 kV, and I think the Skystar and the Leader are actually way above 4500 kV, and they're actually probably sitting closer to 5 or maybe over that. And then when you put a 4S voltage through that on a 2.5 inch prop with the case of the Skystar, and it's actually over 5000 kV, I'd say maybe 5.2, something like that, you're overpropping the motor massively. And then of course what you end up doing with all that stress is you start converting, you start getting efficiency losses, and you start converting that energy into heat. So you're not running efficiently, you're stressing the motor, and at the point where you're very likely to blow it, as I did with the Leader when we did go too far past that stress point by adding 3 inch props. So if you've already got a Leader 3SE, what I suggest is that you do not run, if you're as throttle happy as I am anyway, do not run 3 inch props if you're going to play with 4S. It's going to do what it has done twice now for me with those motors, which I honestly believe are not 4500 kV, they're above that, and it will blow them. It is overpropping them, you're going to get a bad time out of it. So I would, to be honest with you, I think it actually performs really well on the 2.5 inch props and 4S. That's the sweet spot for that. Don't push it to the 3 inch props. You can run the 3 inch props on 3S, it seems to be fine with that. The motor temps are within a reasonable temperature, and that's all good. Now, another thing that supports this is there is another motor manufacturer that we know to be very good, and often in all the testing that gets done, which there are numerous tests out there that show the kV and the performance, is Emax. Emax make great motors, and there is another 3 inch light 3-inch in the wild, which is the Emax Babyhawk 3-inch. Now that is running these motors, and I've got a set of these to try out. These are the Emax 1106 4500 kV. Now there's no surprise that you pay more for the better spec motors. There's obviously a correlation there. If you go for some of these cheap bind and fly quads, they are cheaper, but you don't know where the corners are being cut. And in this instance, I think there are some corners being cut in terms of the motor specifications, because they're not delivering what they're saying they should be on the kV front. Anyway, you don't see any complaints from people saying the Babyhawk R3-inch is blowing motors. That's on 4500 kV, that's on 3 to 4S, that's running 3-inch props, and it's running the Avan 3-inch props. They're not a 30 pitch, they're heavier than that, so that's running a much heavier pitch prop. And again, no problems, no one complaining about hot motors, no one blowing motors. So we know that these are very likely, like the Geps, to actually be 4500 kV and of a good quality. So this is the problem when you start saying, yeah, look at all these great specs and it's so much cheaper than the Emax model, or it's so much cheaper than the Gep model, or blah blah blah. These are where the corners are being cut, and these are the things that I think it's important to take into consideration. I would wager quite happily with any of you if I were to put these on here and run not only the HQ 3x3x3 props, but the Avan props, which are heavier pitched on 4S 3-inch, that would be fine. We wouldn't be blowing motors. Lewis at Full Speed has told me that he does suspect that is a problem, and he has got another motor. He sent me photographs of the new motor that is being designed, or has been designed, the new motor they are going to be putting into these moving forward. So it's up to you what you want to do if you're thinking about buying one of these. Obviously there's my whole thoughts on the rest of the quadcopter, which will be a separate video, but he's sending me these new motors. I'm going to install them, and then I shall do my review on this quadcopter as of that date with the new motors, as you will be buying it moving forward. If you already own this and you already have these motors, as I said, stick to 2.5-inch props. It's still a fantastic machine in terms of its capability and how it flies, and you can see my flight footage of that on 2.5-inch 4S if that floats your boat and that's what you want to do. If you want to go for the crazy power setup and you're thinking of buying one of these, wait until the new motors are out. If you can, wait until I've received them and I've tested them and I've given them my stamp of approval. If my word means something to you, then let's wait and see how that performs first. Anyway, I know this has gone on a little bit, but I felt like this was something that we needed to discuss. I feel like it's left you hopefully a little bit more informed. I'm doing a lot of reviews down at quadcopters of this size, so I feel like I've got enough time with multiple models here to leave you a little bit more informed, and to now consider when you're going for something that is a little bit cheaper. It's great that you can save a few bucks, but there are the potential for these corners to be cut, or for tolerances not to be quite as tight as they would be when you're spending more money on more premium components and parts and quadcopters. So yeah, interesting. I thought you should know, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave me a comment. Please continue to like and subscribe. If you want to support me, please don't forget I have a Patreon. This helps me continue to test all this stuff and to buy all the parts to build into these frames that I'm endlessly reviewing and bits and pieces. So thank you to all my current Patreon supporters, and for any of you that might consider it. And let's crack on. Plenty more to do. See you in the next one.